Okay, thank you so much, Theo, for having this interview with us. So, before we jump right into the questions, can you please take your time to introduce yourself to the audience? Maybe for those who are not really familiar with your work, can you just tell us a bit about yourself, your artistic journey, and how you became the artist that you are today?
Sure. Thank you for having me. My name is Teo. I'm originally from the Netherlands, but I live in Italy now in a small village just an hour outside of Rome. I've been drawing my whole life, so I think most artists will give you the same answer. It's sort of like I've always been drawing and I just never stopped. And luckily, I now managed to make a living out of this. I'm a bit older now. I'm 41. I turned 41 last week. And so I've been doing this, I think, semi professional for about 20 years. And I've done a lot of things. I've worked at advertising agencies, I've done graphic design, I've done graffiti, these kind of things. And this all sort of all came together and ended up as me mostly being a children's book illustrator now.
I love that. I absolutely love hearing about like different artists' backgrounds, and it's always fun to see where like how everything progressed. Like you said, you did graffiti and illustration, and it just I really find it interesting because so many artists have different backgrounds, and some people started from even a non-artistic background. So I always find it very interesting. I find like graffiti is a pretty common one. I've interviewed quite a few artists who like have a background in graffiti, so that's interesting.
I think also in the when I was a bit younger, so 20 years ago, I think this whole graffiti street art. I mean, graffiti is of course a
Mm.
lot older, but this whole street art thing sort of had a renaissance or like a
Yeah.
and I was right at the start of this, and right at that time, I also did like a lot of traditional painting with acrylics and these kind of
Mm.
things. So I sort of rode that wave too, and I had exhibitions worldwide with these things. I mean, honestly, I can't look at these paintings anymore because I was 20 years
Yeah.
old. They were
Yeah.
garbage.
I feel that. It's like it's a part of it feels like a ghost of your past self sometimes. It's so you look at your old work and it's like you made it, but you kind of feel a bit disconnected from it because it's like it's totally different from what you do right now. I get that so much. I love that. Yeah.
Honestly, what you said, I mean, this still happens now too because I do a lot of books, children's books, these kind of things, and there's a really long period between me finishing the book and the book actually being in stores. That might
Mm.
sometimes take a year, maybe even longer. And in a year, when a year has passed, I've done so many other projects already. And then finally, one of these books that I worked on releases, and I see the cover in again, and I'm
And it's
like,
like, oh no.
oh no, now I have to put this on social media. I mean, even though
Oh my God.
I mean, I know it's not that bad, but like,
Yeah, but there's still some time and things you'll be like, I could do this totally differently if you give me this project
exactly.
right now. I get that. It's so funny. I find it so funny because like that's the exact same thing I noticed with my art as well, especially in art school. Like I look back to like the work I did from just a few weeks ago and immediately I'm like I can see how to do that in a totally different way.
Right, right.
I wanted to ask about your inspirations because I love looking at your work. It has this atmosphere. It's spooky, it's playful, it's colorful, but at the same time dark and airy. So can you tell us a bit about your artistic inspirations and just tell us how you channel some of that inspiration into your work?
Yeah, this is sort of a tricky question, I guess, because it's not really one thing. I mean,
Mm.
obviously, I'm very inspired by horror movies. I mean, I mean, I don't even think I have to explain this. But at the same time, not so much. Like, there's definitely a sort of Japanese anime influence in my work.
Mm.
However, I don't really watch any anime. So I mean, except for like maybe the Studio Ghibli movies, these kind of things. So people are often a bit surprised when they start talking to me about anime, and I'm like, What are you talking about? I have
What are you
no idea what
talking
this
about?
is." Yeah, I've never heard of this. So the thing is I think in general though, cinema inspires me a lot, and
Mm.
especially cinematography,
Yeah.
because this is basically also what I'm doing, right? Like, you're setting up a scene, you're deciding where the light comes from, you're deciding a camera angle, these kind of things. Also, I'll be honest, deciding camera angles, because sometimes I don't want to draw a character in a certain pose. So I'm like, okay, okay, let's switch to a simpler camera perspective. Um, and a lot of photography, but I couldn't give you any names. Like, I have a Pinterest board with like thousands and thousands of photographs. And I think this is really inspiring to me too. But it is really inspiring also on a technical level for me to sort of emulate what you see going on in a photograph, right? With the depth of field, like how the lighting is, the film grain, even these kind of things. I think that this is really inspiring to me.
Yeah, I see that a lot in your work. Your work looks like, of course, like you said, it's what you basically do, but it literally looks like it could be a still frame right out of an animated movie, right? It looks like someone just turned on a show and took a screenshot of what was going on, and I think you really do capture the mood and the atmosphere and the storytelling, which is I can definitely see your, like you mentioned, cinema photography. I think you did like a study of studies where you pick a photograph and you kind of like I loved that because how you interpret like photographs and studies rather than just like making it a one for one study, you kind of like add a story, add character, and I think it's a really cool way to like use reference and kind of make it your own at the same time while also like doing a study.
Right, and this actually, you're really well prepared, by the way. The these things that you're talking about, these photo studies, this was actually a game changer for me,
Mm,
because it really sort of forced me to really look at small details. Like, okay, but
mm,
like, how is the light falling here? What is happening to the texture there? And this sort of changed so much for me that I mean, my work is always pretty flat, but this sort of also changed it, that I sort of started paying more attention to the smaller details and how much these details can add to the overall vibe of a picture.
yeah.
And this now actually, because I've been doing this for a while, I always have pictures for reference next to my illustrations. And now I can sort of also figure out, right? Okay, I really like this setting of this picture, but I like the lighting of the other picture. And by now I've done this so often that I can sort of imagine how the lighting would look from the other picture into the other picture, and that will be
Mm,
my
yeah.
illustration.
That makes sense. Yeah, of course. It's just a matter of like all the knowledge you've gathered from all the studies. I think yeah, studies definitely can help you, especially like why a lot of professional artists will tell beginners to always study references and use references that study from life because find a lot in like real life that you would not notice if you were doing it from your head, right? And it's from doing studies and practicing that you're able to eventually incorporate those elements into your work to make your work feel more rich because like I said your work feels rich, it feels like an animated movie, and I'm sure it's due to all this like the practice you've gained from studies and observation and all that and your reference that you're able to make these compelling illustrations come to life.
Right, right. It's better put than I could do
No, not at all.
it.
But speaking of studies and artworks, I wanted you to share a bit about your creative process from coming up with ideas all the way to your workflow. Can you just share a bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's also obviously in the tutorial that we're undoubtedly going to
Yeah,
talk about
yeah, we're
later.
gonna
But
talk. Yeah.
I'm not going to spoil too much. But um, I think the thing that makes, I mean, from what I've noticed, what makes a difference between me and maybe some other illustrators. I mean, there's enough illustrators that probably work the same way as I do. I really want to think what I want to draw before I even start to draw something. So I will never randomly start sketching things. I don't own a sketchbook. I've never owned a sketchbook. Uh, when I draw something, I want to draw something with a purpose. And I don't know if this is the best way of working, but this is what works for me. So I really start to think, what do I want to draw? Why do I want to draw it? This is very important. And then how am I going to draw it? And this can sometimes happen a lot of times, not so much anymore lately, but a couple of years ago, when you just wake up and your brain is still a bit foggy, you're maybe still half asleep. I would just sort of get ideas then, and I would decide, like, okay, I'm gonna see if I can do something with this idea. um, but of course, also sometimes I see pictures that inspire me. Sometimes I have a random idea. The thing is, for me, there's always a certain set of sort of golden rules that I'd like to adhere to. I mostly want to draw something creepy, but I don't want to just draw a creepy drawing. I want to sort of subvert the tropes maybe a little bit. Um, just do something a little bit different than draw a creepy monster.
Yeah. You know what you mentioned about like not having a sketchbook and just be drawing with what comes to mind. I have a few art friends that like that. They told me that they just draw, like they just have an idea and that's how they execute. It's very interesting because like lots of artists, we hear a lot of different advice from different people, but like in reality, you just have to do what works for you, right? What works best for you is like what the process you follow. I've had because I'm personally the kind of person who cannot come up with ideas for like the life of me on the spot. So I have to like iterate, and I do sometimes that thing happens whereby I like get a flash of an idea, but when I sit down at first I have to like think and think and think. So like I have to go through like warm up sketches, like before I'm able to come up with an idea. So it's always very interesting to see another artist's perspective and like how they also work in their process and stuff. So yeah.
It sounds like we are the exact opposite.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I love having these interviews because it's always interesting to like like learn more about other artists and how they like the behind the scenes because sometimes on social media we don't really get to see a lot of the behind the scenes, and sometimes it can come off as like how do I put it, like people just wonder how does that happen. I like tapping into that, if you know what I mean. I think everyone has something to learn from that.
As long as you're not gonna ask me what brushes I use, because they
I
have
was
nothing.
just about to ask that. I was just about
No,
to
no.
ask. No, actually, I was just about to ask, can you talk, well, not necessarily brushes, but if you don't mind sharing, what are some of your favorite digital tools that you cannot live without? Like is it the lasso tool? Like what is that go-to that you reach for in your process that is like this is a staple in my process, or I cannot live without this?
I mean, because I made the joke about the brushes is because, and this is maybe also a joke among artists themselves. Like, this is the most asked question. Like, what brushes do you
Yeah.
use? And all artists will give you the same answer, that it is completely irrelevant what brushes you use. But the thing is, yeah, there is one tool that I could not live without, and this is the lasso tool, because I draw everything with the lasso tool.
Mm,
Uh, and specifically, I always pronounce it wrong, but there's the lasso tool that like you can just free draw, and there's the one where you can sort of
mm,
drag it around, right? Like click, 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 click.
okay.
The polygonal lasso tool. Okay, this is what I draw everything with, and this is a really absurd way of drawing. Um, and when even show also my other artist friends like how I draw, they're like, "Dude, what are you doing?" Uh, so basically, what I don't know, the best analogy that I can come up with is I do more sculpting than I do drawing, sort of
Mm,
2D sculpting. So, it,
2D.
yeah.
Okay.
So let's say I need to draw a face, right? I'll make like a. This is not exactly how I work, but this is the easier way to explain it. I just make a square, just a square, and then I just chip bits off of the sides of the square until it has the shape of a face that I want.
Ah, I
Uh,
see.
yeah, and then I keep adding little things or removing little things. But like drawing, as in the traditional sense of what you sort of think of what drawing is, right? Like with a pencil and putting your hand down and drawing a smooth line. I have not done this in 10 years, I think.
Oh wow. I see. That's interesting. So I'm guessing, like, because this question that we usually talk about in art school, like, do you think in lines or shapes? So I'm guessing you're more of a shape person if your workflow is more like that, right? Because I have like classmates who they only think in lines. Like, give them a shape and they see nothing. It has to be like clean lines. But I have other classmates where it's only shapes. Like they cannot deal with lines early. So I'm guessing your mind kind of works more like when in shapes than in shape
Yeah,
theory. Wow,
it's
that's
it's
interesting.
it's straight as shapes, and then on top of that is also straight the color.
Color,
Um,
wow.
yeah, because since my work doesn't have outlines, right? Because you can get away with a lot of things when you do outlines, because the background and the hair color could sort of be the same, right? Of a character in the
Yes.
background, because there's a black outline in between anyway. If you don't use outlines, this is going to be impossible, right? Because the hair will just
Yeah.
dissolve into the background. So I immediately start going to color, just so I don't have to deal with this step later on anymore. Now,
Mm.
I mean, I will still deal with it during the process, right? Because maybe the character has pink hair, but then this doesn't match with the background, so the hair might change over the course of the drawing from pink to blue to to yellow to whatever.
It's very interesting actually. It's cool to just see how the different workflows of different artists. I find that very personally I love seeing the behind the scenes. That's why we can just perfectly transition into the book, Character Design Quarterly by 3D Total. You see what I did there? But yeah, I love I yeah, I love like books like that show the process and behind the scenes where artists can, share their like workflows and experiments and tips and advice. So can you share a bit about your contribution to the Character Design Quarterly?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was for the same reasons that you said, because it's maybe interesting. I thought like to give a little bit more information about how I come up with ideas,
Mhm.
how I then sort of sketch out the ideas, and how I then also choose to ignore most of the ideas. Uh, I mean, I don't know. The thing is, because I think this is much more interesting and much more valuable, maybe especially if you're a beginning artist. Because again, I'm coming back to the what brushes do you use? It doesn't really matter. No, like what software do
Mm,
you use? It doesn't matter. What matters is what you're gonna draw and what and why you're gonna draw it. For me, this is the most important thing. Why are you drawing this? Why did you choose to draw this? So this is, I think, also why. How can I say this? I mean, a lot of illustration work can be quite boring, and I'm not meaning like the actual act of illustration, but people usually just go to their first idea and that's it, right? Like, oh,
mm.
we're doing a fantasy comic, so we're gonna need an orc. What does an orc look like? An orc is green with pointy ears and a helmet, and he drools or something. No, it's like the stereotypical sort of first thing that comes to mind when you think of an orc. Okay, then let's draw this orc and let's draw him as cool as possible with like all this armor with these pointy things on everywhere. No, and then you just basically have a World of Warcraft character, which has been done 9 million times already, right? Um,
Yeah,
what about what can you do? How can you draw this orc so that this orc is a drawing that you made, and that everybody, when they see this drawing, they immediately will think like, oh yeah, that's definitely Neddy that drew this orc, right?
yeah.
So this is maybe, I mean, obviously there's also some techniques and these kind of things, but to be honest, I think techniques are not so interesting because it's just a means to an end.
Yeah. And also, your technique can change all the time. I know I personally have a very chaotic workflow, but I find that like what's the word? Basically, the intentionality is what's the most important. Kind of like knowing what you wanna actually convey in your artwork. I think is more important over technique, because like anyone can learn technique, right? And anyone can your technique, your process, your workflow can change. In fact, it actually does change from time to time, but the most important thing is how to actually like express yourself correctly, I guess. If that makes any sense.
And in my case, I really want to tell a story with each illustration that I do. And it doesn't have to
Yeah.
be like a huge story, but I want people to look at it and like maybe imagine the rest of the story, or, so, and I try to, okay, so for instance, I wanted to draw some sort of wolf-like character, right? A wolf, monstrous, sort of werewolf. I don't know, some one of these sort of creepy monsters. Okay, well, what you can do is then immediately like, okay, let's just draw the monster in a forest, right? Because I mean, this
Mhm.
is where they hang out. But I thought like, okay, but how can I make this more interesting? Maybe the monster is maybe it's a pet, right? Maybe it's somebody's pet. And
Mm,
where do you take your pets? I mean, the pets need food. Maybe you would go to the supermarket, right? So I ended up with an illustration of drawing like this werewolf sort of monster in a shopping cart with the owner like picking out the his favorite food, right? So I still achieved drawing like the thing that I wanted to draw, which was a monster, but I tried to come up with sort of a story around it.
yeah. And automatically that makes it more compelling because you're adding your own flavor and your own a unique twist to the story, which makes it more interesting for the viewer. Yeah, definitely agree with that. Even like I mentioned with your studies, you also do the same thing. It's not rather than like, most people when they do studies, it's just like a one for one. But rather than just like a one for one study, you kind of like give it a twist. I'm like, okay, how can I tell a story? I remember one in particular that I saw that I really liked was the picture of the girl leaning against the wall. I really like that one because you added like a no smoking sign, right? But in the original reference, it wasn't there. But then, this added a lot of story, like contrast. It's like a girl smoking by a no smoking sign. Who is this girl? She's kind of edgy. What's going on, And
What a
that just
rebel.
automatic water rebel, exactly. I thought that was really a really cool way to like interpret and add, make a simple reference more interesting and compelling to look at it.
And the thing is it doesn't even take too much work, right? Because it was just a character and a sign. That's literally it. It's not no.
Yeah.
I didn't have to write a whole script for this, or no. It's sometimes very simple things can be super effective.
Yeah, so we're almost done. Like I said, I try not to take too much time. So before we leave, I just wanted to ask you general advice would you have for beginner artists or aspiring artists who are trying to make this a professional career?
Well, I mean, we live in very strange times now. So, I mean, with the advent of
Yeah,
AI and these
yeah.
kind of things, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if I would be super honest, like I would maybe say to 80% of the people, like maybe you should start thinking about doing something else. Because, and I don't want to be sound too depressing, but I
Mm,
mean, I think no, the sort of more established artists, I think we're sort of safe for now, but like no, a lot of this sort of like grunt work where everybody has to start, right? Because you have to start somewhere, like designing six hats for some character for a video game or something, like intern work sort of. I mean,
yeah.
AI is all going to take this over. However, let's not completely end on a depressing note. uh, in the end, I think the most important thing is, and this is also what I done, I just really enjoy drawing. And I've been doing this for a long time. And trust me, like really trust me, I'm 41 now. Of my 20 years of trying to do this professionally, I have been flat broke for at least 15 of them. Because because these things take a lot of time, but I never
Yeah,
gave up
it's
because
time.
I really enjoy the act of drawing. And I think if you just I don't know. I think my dad is really proud of me, and he said this to me. And the thing is, maybe sometimes you don't really realize this so much when you're in the midst of it yourself. But he said, like, you just kept doing it, and it doesn't matter if you couldn't eat, you just kept drawing. And
Mm,
obviously now after 15 years of doing this, I mean, you're gonna be good at it. And
yeah.
if you're good at it, I mean, I'm guessing good things will come to you.
Yeah. Definitely, no, I agree because like at the end of the day, it's only those who keep trying that can actually find a result, right? Like it's if you stop, you're not gonna find anything. You're guaranteed nothing, but if you keep moving, then you're guaranteed something at the very least.
Yeah, maybe this would be a good advice as well. I think maybe try also to keep an open mind on what you want to do exactly. Because when I
Mm,
started out doing this, I would have never imagined that I would be like a children's book illustrator.
mm,
Because I did graffiti and I was
yeah.
cool and I did street art, and who wants to draw children's books? I don't even want to have children. I mean, I still don't want to have children, but but in the end, like I sort of went into this direction, and it's super fun. And because I think because I'm having a lot of fun, other work also started coming. So I do a lot of visual
Mm,
development
exactly.
for the animation things, because because I meet a lot of younger people that very specifically, like I want to work for Riot or I want to work for Blizzard.
Mm.
And the only thing they do is like draw the same orcs over it. Again, the orcs we were talking about earlier, over and over again.
The
But I mean,
orcs.
yeah, right. But if you only draw one thing, then you can only get hired at one place, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, just like just make art that speaks to you, I guess, instead of thinking about, I specifically want to work for this company, so I'm only gonna draw these things. Oh, just draw whatever feels good.
I agree. I also think like that's why it's very important to be true to yourself because then you'll be able to work in anywhere you want to work as long as it's like true to you. Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with you. Thank you so much. That was solid advice. And yeah, that's about it.
All right.